Hey, this is Chris Roop from GuitArmy, and in this lesson, this is part number 2 to my series of how to play over chord changes. I'm going to show you some serious pro tips on how to start sounding good over changes, so you're going to want to make sure you check this video out. So in the first lesson where I talked about playing over changes, I talked about the chords G, C, and D. They're the same 3 chords I'm going to use. That way I think it helps them relate better as the lesson, instead of me being somewhere totally different on the neck. So in the first one I talked about in the key of G, if you're playing over G, C, and D, you can just solo just using the scale, the full major scale, or you could take a little more sophisticated way of approaching it, and over top of the G chord you play G major pentatonic. Over top of the C major chord, you play C major pentatonic. And then over top of the D chord, the 5 chord, you switch to a D major pentatonic. And in this lesson, we're going to take a look at the triads and the chord tones, and start looking at specific target notes. So let's go ahead and take a look at the triads and the chord tones for the 1 chord, the G major chord. Okay, first we're going to take a look at what are the actual chord tones for a G major position number 1 here. And this is going to be G here. This is the root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and then the root again. So it goes 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, 5, 7, 1. You can look at the chart down below. My advice, if you don't know this, then just pause it and then run the pattern. Just to kind of get it, in your fingers and in your mind. All right, so we're not going to really deal with the 7ths here. So I'm going to show you what I think is a really smart way to improvise is to think about where the triads are. A triad is your root, 3rd, and 5th. So when I'm playing this chord here, if we look at strings 3, 4, and 5, I'm playing these 3 notes here. They happen to be D, G, and B. That's part of a G major triad. That is a second inversion triad because it has the 5th in the bottom. So this 5th, root, and 3rd, that is a triad there. Those are notes that you can target when soloing. And the reason these notes sound better than other notes like 2, 4, and 6, because these are the notes in the chord. All right, so the next triad that you can take a look at and use to target is this right here. And once again, this is basically when you're playing this G major bar chord, these are the notes that you're playing on strings 2, 3, and 4. You're playing G, B, D, or 1, 3, 5. And that is a root position triad because it goes 1, 3, 5. The last triad we're going to target here in this G major first position here is this triad here, where it's going to go 3, 5, 1. This is a first inversion because it has a 3 in the bottom, 3, 5, 1, or B, D, G. Once again, that's just part of the chord that you're playing. So what you're doing is you're seeing these triads, and as you're soloing, you're going to target those notes. And what do I mean by target those notes? Well, as you're soloing and having a good time, these notes here are going to sound over top of this chord. These are going to be stronger notes. So my advice is to practice targeting them. If you're going. And when I say target, it doesn't mean necessarily when I change the chord, you have to play that note first. But what you do want to do is you want to kind of focus on one of those notes and whatever your phrase is. When I say target, you're probably going to be playing that note longer. And basically kind of focusing on that note. And I promise you, if you target these notes in the chord as the chords go by, it'll sound more organized, it'll sound a lot better. And this is really what pros spend a lot of time mastering, so that they're always picking the better notes. And just because it's a chord tone doesn't mean it's a better note. It's probably going to sound better, but it doesn't mean you can't target the 2, 4, or 6 over that chord as well. But I think as a guitar player, you want to be able to target those chord tones. You want to be able to do that as well as target other notes, but practicing these triads and targeting those notes for your phrases is really going to make you sound a lot better. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be doing over the C chord. If you hear me talking about triads and chord tones and you don't know what they are, or you need more work with those types of things, then my suggestion would be for you to go over to my Patreon page, because I put up I put up 4 different courses. I put up a course on major scales. I think that's at least 3 hours long. I put up my minor scales course as well. You can learn all your minor, your regular scales, your pentatonic scales, your chord tones. You can do that for the major course as well. And in terms of triads, I have a course that I put on there that teaches you how to play your triads on strings 1, 2, and 3. And then I also have another course where I show you how to play your main triads on strings 2, 3, and 4. Those 4 courses are available to you over on my Patreon page. So if you think you need a little more understanding of what's going on with these chord tones and triads and stuff, maybe check out my Patreon page, and it's only a couple bucks a month, and you get access to all those courses. And I have a lot more courses on there other than just those courses as well. All right, the chord tones for the C chord are going to go 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, 5. One more time, 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, 5. In terms of triads that we're going to focus right here is we're going to focus on this triad here. These 3 notes, which is, it's going to be G, C, and then E. That's a C major triad. Happens to be second inversion because we're going to start, the lowest note is a 5th, 5, 1, 3. So we're going to use that one to target, and then we're also going to use this one, which is a root position where it goes C, E, G. And it's just part of this C major bar chord. So we have this triad, and then we have this triad here. So as you're playing over top, you could be playing your C major pentatonic. But if you want to get a little more focused, if you can target these notes in your phrasing, it's going to sound really good. Now let's take a look at the triads over the 5 chord, the D major chord. Okay, if we have the 5 chord here, it's D major, or I can play it here. We have a couple different triads here we can work with. We start here with D. It's going to go D, F sharp, A. That is a root position triad because it starts with the root in the bottom, 1, 3, 5. So we can target that. And then next, we have these notes here. We're going to have the 3rd, the 5th, and the root. That's the first inversion triad because we have the 3rd in the bottom. This is a really good triad. It's a real easy way to play. It's a real nice way and easy way to play a D chord. Like if you don't want to play this one, or you don't want to play this whole chord, just playing this one sounds good. You'll hear in songs where they go from A to D. And a lot of times this is a favorite D major chord for guitar players. So this is the second triad here. We have 3, 5, 1. And then the last one is just a plain old D chord, which is a second inversion because it is 5, 1, 3. So the 3 different triads we're going to focus on or target this one, and this one. So my advice to begin to even see these, it's hard to do these live while the changes are going by. So I would probably start by just playing them. Like here's G, here's a G, here's a G triad, here's my C triad, here's my C triad here. From a D triads to this one, and this one. I would practice them over and over just so that you have them down in your hands. Here's the 5 chord of this one, and this one. And the reason I would do that is because you need to be able to see these pretty quickly to be able to actually use these over top of changes. And then as you get more comfortable seeing these, then you can start thinking about, as you're soloing, you're playing, let's say you're playing over the 1 chord. And you're thinking, I know the 4 chords next. Well, you can start looking at those notes in your brain and thinking about whatever you're playing. Like maybe I know C's coming up, and right there's the root, the 1. So I'm going to bend up into that 1. So as that C comes up, I can actually target that root note, even maybe come in a little before the beat or before the chord change, so that sounds a little slicker. So as you're targeting these, you want to be. I generally tell people target when the chord changes. Try to target one of the notes on beat number 1, and then once you get good at that, then maybe target them, play them a little earlier, or a little after beat number 1. So it sounds a little cooler than always coming in on a chord tone right on the downbeat of 1. So this may seem overly complicated and technical, but I think that's okay when you're practicing. When you're soloing, you just want to kind of relax, enjoy yourself, and try to sound as good as you can, or get out whatever melody you hear in your head. But what I promise you is if you get used to these triads, you're going to start to see them and hear them. And those notes are going to sound a little better than the notes that maybe you would have normally picked. And I don't always do this. If I'm feeling what I'm doing, then maybe I'm just going to solo. Maybe I'm just going to solo over the G major scale and not even worry about any of this stuff and just let my ears do the walking. Like if I'm on a note as a chord goes by and I don't like it, then I'll just get off of that note. But I think as an exercise, this is a great way to start hearing. So when someone's listening to you solo, they can hear that you're actually playing over changes. So this was my part number 2, getting friendly with your triads and to start targeting your chord tones. Thanks for taking the time to check out this lesson. If you want to see more lessons like this, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you get notifications when my next video comes out, and I will see you in the next lesson.